If you're here today, that means you're an expert soul. You're like the Green Beret or the Navy SEAL of souls. And really, it's beyond that because you have to be an expert hiker to go up Mount Everest or to hike the Appalachian Trail. You have to be an expert incarnating soul to take on planet Earth.
Mhm.
Now, it's such a huge jump in consciousness and such a huge learning experience that for every 100 souls that are qualified and want to come to Earth, there's only a body for one out of 100. So you're like the best of the best of the best to be here.
I hope
You know,
everybody's really listening to that. If you just tuned in and you heard that, you are the best of the best of the best, no matter how successful or unsuccessful you think your life is at this moment, no matter how many problems you're taking on, no matter what you're dealing with, your level of depression, your anything, any problem that you have. You are the best of the best of the best to be living inside that incarnated avatar that you're in right now. My guest today is David Suich, who has interviewed and talked to and studied well over 1,200 NDEs. And with that unusual perspective, he has a lot to share with us about why love is the most powerful force on the planet and what you can do to improve your human existence right now. And we are going to dive very deep. So, David, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
well, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, I love a conversation like this, and I love your perspective because not only are you into the NDEs, but you are also a channeler of the information. And while we were kind of getting warmed up and talking about what we might talk about today, I know that you also are very intuitive yourself and get a lot of guidance and information. So I guess for the people who are watching today, who may be they're on this channel because they regularly watch NDEs, what do you think is the number one most important message that people need to understand about what's going on in the chaotic world that we are living in right now?
Well, if you turn on the news today and you survey the world, it seems like everything's falling apart and everything's getting worse. We're trashing the environment. There's wars going on. The love of a lot of people is growing cold. It's getting more and more difficult to do simple things. Life's getting more complex. We have a whole generation of distracted people, with smartphones and technology. I mean, it seems like the world's falling apart and everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. The news is a well-crafted fear report. Brings the worst behavior of 8 billion people and brings it right into the front of our consciousness. It's poison for the soul. So I like the fact that you stay away from the news because, Pleiadian Channeler gave me some very good advice. She said, if you want to advance, if you're serious about your spirituality, you have to disconnect yourself from that frequency of negativity and drama and chaos and violence. Because the human consciousness was not meant to take on the suffering of an entire planet. Just pay attention to your own little world and the people around you and do your best to be a loving person and show compassion and kindness for the people that you come in contact with every day. And so I just want to tell the listeners, relax. We're going through a change. This is the Great Awakening. There's a big shift happening. And for thousands and thousands of years, for most of humanity's history, the energy of fear was dominant on the planet, and that changed a few decades back, and now the energy of love is dominant. We're just coming out of the barbaric age, and so there's a lot of crap coming to the surface, and it's going to be dealt with, but humanity's got a beautiful future. There's a new world of love coming, and in about 150 years, the world's going to look as different as it did 150 years ago from today, which was, really different. No cell phones, no electronics, no electricity. And it's a different world, and it's going to be that different. And we're going to get past our problems. We're going to clean up the environment. We're going to make contact with alien species. We're going to learn to live with each other in peace and harmony. The new world of love is coming. And the faster we want it to come, the best thing we can do is not to focus on the negative stuff that's going on, but just do our best to be the best versions of ourselves we can be and show kindness and compassion and love to our fellow human being.
Amen. Wow. Well said. Couple things I want to point out there. Number one, we're not saying we don't care about what's happening around the world. We don't care about the suffering. We don't care about it. This is more about a stepping stone. And if you think 150 years in the future does not mean that you are a part of it, you are being like, this is being built on the backs of us right now who are in the part of the Great Awakening. And if you're on this channel, you are in some way, shape, or form being drawn to this content because it is helping you wake up. It is helping you raise your vibration. It is helping you become more loving. And as you do that, it ripples out. But I think that the other part of that is that the news is designed to lower your frequency. And by keeping that tight, I haven't watched the news in at least 12 years. I am so much happier. The news I need to hear will come to me through somebody else. I get to find out what's going on, but I don't have to absorb it and absorb the negative impact to my vibration. I can still keep my vibration high, because if we can all keep our vibration higher, then we're impacting the people in the circle around us, the people that you're meeting at the store, the people that you're talking to, the people that you're working with. And when that happens, that ripple is so much more powerful than if you were just aware and watching the news and pulling that in. So I'd love you to speak to that.
Yeah. So, what we focus on, we get more of. So there's this stuff that Erlin in Melissa Gates Perry's book, Being Humans, he calls dark matter fabric. And it's kind of like the building blocks of the universe. So whatever we focus on, the dark matter fabric reacts and sort of gives us that. So, you'll see a hypochondriac who's afraid of this disease and that. Well, the dark matter fabric doesn't know what you want and what you don't want. It only just assumes, well, this is what you're focusing on. We're just going to give the human being more of that. So as we shift away from sort of the bad news and our addiction to negativity, which we have in our society, I mean, look at Hollywood. There's this perversion of violence and narcissism in the movies, and it's kind of sad. But as we move to more positive things, and channels like the Good News Network, goodnewsnetwork.org is the
I
only news
haven't even heard of
I'll
that.
watch. Yeah, they got a website and they got a YouTube channel. But you're going to see more and more good news. And as we focus on that, because we're great manifestors, as we focus on the positive, all of a sudden that'll start growing. And so once the ball gets rolling in the right direction, it's really going to be exciting to see what happens, because we're making things worse for ourselves. We're great manifestors. For instance, I think it was last year, a hurricane was coming through not too far from where I live in East Texas. And I did something I rarely do. I turned on the news to see what was going on, and I heard news channel after news channel saying, well, this is the size of the hurricane, but if it does this, it could get much worse and much bigger. Not one channel said, oh, it could diminish if it does this. Well, what happens when you put fear into the minds of millions of people about the hurricane getting bigger? They're going to make it bigger. And that seems silly. Oh, hurricane can't get bigger by people thinking about it. Really? Talk to a quantum physicist. They have to leave the room and distance themselves from the building and the experiment, because they know human consciousness affects matter, and their expectation of the outcome of the experiment will affect the experiment. Quantum physicists know this. Human consciousness affects reality. So it's really important to focus on the positive. Really important.
Thank you for bringing that back to a science part, because for so long, these discussions are always labeled as woo-woo, and I think they're anything but anymore. And one of the things that's come out, and I've talked about in this program quite a bit recently, are the telepathy tapes, because up until now, telepathy was mostly relegated to people who had a near-death experience and said, I went to heaven and all my communication was telepathic, right, David? I mean, that's prevalent in NDE experiences, but now we actually have evidential information that humans in the human bodies are experiencing with their children who are non-speaking autistics or have other disabilities, are actually well more able and spiritually awake than probably most of us on the planet. And we've labeled them as one thing, and they're really coming in to help wake us up even more and help us remember how powerful we are. And back to you and what you just said, the power of your thoughts and how we have the power to make a hurricane bigger, which sounds weird, but it's not, because there's so much evidential information with quantum physics and now what we understand our brains to do. And I know that you also get information from your guides about these things and confirmation. So for you, it's super real.
Oh, yes. And I like what you said. The autistic children, I've heard that. They are operating on a higher level of consciousness. And so they have difficulty in the way we communicate. I mean, imagine if you were dropped into some world where they all communicated via Morse code, dots and dashes. I mean, you'd be confused as hell. You wouldn't understand what was going on because they had this primitive method of communication. And that's what's happening with the autistic children. They're in a higher level of consciousness. And, people ask me, well, how did you know that? And I say, well, I'm psychic, just like everybody else.
I
We
love
all
that you say
use,
just like everybody else.
we all have the ability. We are all psychic. We all use that ability daily. Most people are not aware of it. True story. A man takes the same route to work every day because it's a big city that he works in and the traffic's really nasty. And so he takes this reliable route because he knows that even though it's slow, it's going to get me to work in this amount of time and I'll get there on time. And one day he's at this intersection where he's supposed to turn left and he thinks, oh, I'll turn right today, and gets stuck in 45 minutes of traffic. And he's kicking himself saying, what a moron I am. Why did I do that? Well, it saved his life because he worked at the Twin Towers, and that was September 1st, 11, or 2001. It saved his life. So that was a psychic ability. And we're all going to be able to communicate telepathically. 150 years from now, there won't be cell phones. It'll be like, hey, sweetie, do you want to invite the kids over, see if they want to come over for dinner? Yeah, they said they're coming. And we're going to have relationships with intelligent beings on other planets by
Which
communicating
people already
telepathically.
do as channelers. You
Yes,
do.
that's what channelers do. Yes. And so that's going to become commonplace, and we're all going to learn how to do it. So it's just a matter of time. Right now, we're stuck with linear communication. It's kind of slow, lots of misunderstandings, but in that mind to mind communication, there's no misunderstandings. It's what near death experiencers describe, it's what they do in channeling. Yeah.
So you mentioned when we were talking about the news, how love started to come back in. And for a long time, it was just a fear-based world that we were living in. And now love's come in. And you said that there was something that was actually a contract that was shared with you by the Anunnaki. Is that correct?
Oh, no, they didn't share this contract with me. I heard the information secondhand. So, uh,
Yeah. Do you mind sharing it? Because I thought it was fascinating. Never heard it before.
Yeah, now I got to give a little disclaimer to the listeners. So when I hear things about we're all connected, we're just experiencing the illusion of separateness down here, it's all about love. These are concepts that I've heard hundreds of times. I have no doubt about it. When we
Right.
talk about things like the history of humanity, it gets into kind of weird stuff, very spotty information. And so, maybe view it with some skepticism. I believe it's the truth. But basically, what happened was, when you're a species like humanity and you grow up, and we're not grown up right now, we're going through the terrible twos from a consciousness level. We're not even at our teenage years yet, through adolescence. I mean, that's way
God
off.
help us when we become rebellious.
Yeah, we're a ways off. But when you grow up, it's the same thing as a human being. You're a child and somebody else is taking care of you. And then you grow up and you become a parent. So your job becomes to help seed life on another planet, to be a parent. So our cosmic parents are the Pleiadians. They've had a couple of million years of technology, and their cosmic parents are the Arcturians, who are our cosmic grandparents. And so they kind of help seed life on this planet. I don't know the details, but Earth was kind of designed as a biogenetic laboratory that sort of has the blueprint of life. And human beings in our DNA, the scientists call it junk DNA. Well, really, it's the blueprint of life. It's not junk DNA. Nature doesn't make mistakes like that. And the backup, like you have a backup for your hard drive in case the primary backup fails, you got a secondary backup. The backup is they're protected throughout the world and adored. Dolphins, right? They're the only mammal with the brain bigger than ours. They're the backup. They hold the same genetic markers in their DNA. So, you never see tuna-free dolphin. You don't find can of tuna-free dolphin. You see dolphin-free tuna. We all know that for some reason they have to be protected. Whales are protected. So we're all aware of this. Anyway, so that's what Earth was designed as, like this free will zone, this sort of living library We have a lot of diversity of life because we contain this genetic blueprint. There's aliens that travel the vast distances of space just to gaze upon the beautiful library of Gaia. You know, it's that beautiful. We see it every day, so we don't see its beauty. But anyway, because it was designed as a free will zone, some bad aliens came in, this group called the Anunnaki, and they were looking for this stuff called monatomic gold to fix their atmosphere. So they sent this android ship here. I don't know how long ago, 400,000 years. I don't have an exact timeline. And they found the gold, so they sent a delegation here to mine the gold because they needed this specific kind of gold to fix their atmosphere, monatomic gold. And if there's a chemist or a geologist who knows what that is, maybe put it in the comments and enlighten the rest of us, because I'd never heard the term monatomic gold. I don't know what that is. But anyway, they found it here. They needed it. And so they kind of have a class structure, you know, and so they had this slave race and they came from a much colder planet. So the normal 75-degree atmosphere seemed incredibly hot for them. They were miserable and they rebelled. So the Anunnaki, who are great builders, their solution was to genetically fuse an ancient human being, primitive human being, with their DNA to create a slave class that could handle the heat and was smart enough to do the work, but not so smart where they could be connected spiritually and rebel and that kind of thing and think for themselves. So that's why we have 23 chromosomes. They messed with their chromosomes. They kind of disconnected us from the divine. Now, you're not supposed to create a being that requires a soul. And they were failing. And so they finally gave up and they created modern humans, which require a soul. And so the rest of the galaxy said, hey, that's against the divine plan of creation. You can't do that. And they came in and they said, all right, now that you've created these humans, you got to take care of them. You got to watch over them until they mature and can be on their own. And you can't present yourself as gods. You can't abuse them. You can't manipulate them, you know, and that kind of thing. And they did all of that stuff. And round about the 1960s, they got released from their contract, which is probably why the hippie movement started, you know, this explosion of consciousness, but the world wasn't ready for it. And now we're under the protection, and it almost makes me cringe to say this, the Galactic Federation of Worlds. You know, when I first started hearing
like
about
I'm in a movie.
Yeah, when I first started hearing about the Pleiadians, you know, I heard about transporters and replicators and the Prime Directive, where you couldn't get involved with a species until they admitted her. I'm like, you guys aren't even making up a good lie. This is Star Trek. Well, what was the consciousness in the 1950s and 60s of aliens? Right? We were projecting our barbaric consciousness onto them, even though 95% of them are benevolent or neutral. You know, we're the barbaric ones, but we said, oh, they're coming here to eat us or steal our resources or something like that. And so the Pleiadians came in and kind of gave Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, the idea to present a more positive view of alien contact to kind of prepare us for what's probably going to happen in the next 5 years. Pleiadians or some race is probably going to start showing up on an individual basis to let us know they're there and that kind of thing. But yeah, so right now we're under the protection of the Galactic Federation, and they're just kind of waiting for us to grow up and so they can meet us, because if they showed up on the White House lawn today, would they be met with hugs and handshakes and flowers, or would there be a military response? You know, right?
Hard to know. I'm
Which,
going to ask you the obvious question, which is, have you had any direct experience with Pleiadians?
I can't say direct. I believe there's an entity named Bata who is a different lifetime of mine on the Pleiadians. It's me in a different lifetime. I'm not sure about that, but I'll tell you my own experience. I made a video about this on my YouTube channel. The first word I ever spoke as a child was Bata. Now, I don't remember this. My parents told me I would say Bata, Bata, and they'd say, David, what does that mean? And I would just say Bata. I would repeat it. And then I started talking, and I kind of forgot about that. Now, when I was a child, I wanted to be an astronaut, and I would always look for this one star system in the sky. I would call it the old lady in the rocking chair, but I didn't know what it was. This little star system. I was like, oh, there's my favorite star system. Well, after I started my NDE research, I started hearing about the Pleiadians in a documentary called Out on a Limb, where Shirley MacLaine talked about her spiritual awakening. You can still see it on YouTube. And they talked about the Pleiadians. And I thought, wow, you know, our cosmic parents. You know, I kind of looked into it. And I watched this documentary I found online about the Pleiadians. And they said now Billy was brought aboard this mothership and he met this Pleiadian leader called Bata. And the guy repeated it. He goes, "That's Bata." And I nearly fell off my chair. And I called my dad up and I stopped the movie and I called my dad. I was like, "Was that the word I said?" He says, "Yeah, I think so." And so then I thought, well, wait a minute. That star system I was fascinated with, that couldn't be the Pleiades. And so I look up on Google the Pleiades and I'll be darned. That was the star system. And then, of course, I had this psychic that I was on her channel as a guest, like I am on your channel a couple years back. And she says, "Oh, yeah, you were Pleiadian." And so I had a lifetime on the Pleiades. So I was Pleiadian. Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me. I know for a lot of people, this sounds like fringe and wishful thinking or fantasy, any of those kinds of things. But really, there are lots of people who are having these memories. Like, I feel like, to your point, we're getting to a point in our consciousness where we're waking up just enough that information is coming in that was previously hidden. I think it's the stuff that's coming in about what the pyramids are instead of the lie of what was being told about they were slaves and they were, this was being done. And all this information is now starting to become more real for a lot more people, and not just like people that you would see like running around in hippie clothes, but people who have science backgrounds. People like, I'm thinking about Mrs. Roper from that TV show, where she's walking around like that,
Three's Company.
kind of a little ditzy. No, these are people with scientific backgrounds who have been in the corporate world and gotten out of it, and they're now doing awakening work, and they're going to different parts of the world, and they're looking at past civilizations and becoming more knowledgeable about what our past really was. So I always say, when people are watching these things, take in what resonates, leave behind what doesn't. Maybe it's not for you now, maybe it will never be for you, but that's your barometer. Like, check in with you. Like, what does your intuition tell you? Does this BS meter says no way? Or is it like, this is interesting, I might go down a rabbit hole or two this direction?
It's just so funny too, because I'm an engineer and so I'm very skeptical. And so when I went through my spiritual awakening, my spiritual guides, who now I'm in constant communication with, but back then I was not, they brought things to me like one at a time. "You've done this before.
They're like, you
You've
can't
had
handle more
multiple
than
lifetimes."
one.
Yeah, I was like, "No, that can't be true. I couldn't have had multiple life." And then, of course, now I remember a couple other lifetimes, and then just as I'm getting comfortable, they bring me to the next truth, and no, that can't be. And on a channel like this, a lot of people are kind of aware and awake and open-minded, so we can lay it all out there at once. But I mean, this took like years to go step by step because I was so skeptical. I'm an engineer, and I would laugh at people who said they were psychic. I mean, the first guy, he was a guy who died in the dentist chair. He took Vicodin and then he had to go to the dentist and they put him under and it reacted and he died and they had defibrillators and they brought him back. 6-hour interview. And he says, "Oh, yeah, you used to be Pleiadian and you're a teacher and you're going to start developing psychic abilities." And I laughed at him. And then when it started happening, I was like denying it for a long time. And it's like,
Where's that recording?
okay, this is you can't guess that much. I mean, it's too much to deny. And so now I've just kind of accepted it. And now I'm kind of a little open with it. I hid it from my family for forever and that kind of thing. But it's not accepted in society. And so a lot of light
Right.
workers, a lot of people who watch a channel like this, they kind of keep it to themselves.
Yeah,
Because
well, there's only certain
yeah,
people you can talk about different
yeah.
things to. It's interesting. I remember my greatest love, who is now on the other side, Mark, sends me signs all the time. But I remember that we had a phone conversation. This is in maybe August of 2007. So if you think about phones, like, phones were not smart. Texting was just barely happening. You drive around, you'd see www dot on the bottom of an advertisement on a billboard, and you're like, what's that? The internet's just in its infancy. And I remember he was talking about multiple lives. I'm like, multiple lives? This is BS. Like, he's asking me what my sign is. Like, what do you mean what my sign is? Like, I know I'm a Taurus, but I don't want to know anything more about that. I don't believe in any of that. And to your point, like, very left brain. And at that time I think it was a pharmaceutical sales rep, and I went on to work at IBM and be in this corporate job. So I'm really technical, but I will say that back then, I feel like I would become a different person about every 2 years. I would find these different books and I would have these conversations, and it would change my perspective. And I would first take something in and go, nope, 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 just like you described, and push it away. And then, you're coming back to it. My sister would want to talk to me about aliens. I'm like, nope, 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 this is not for me. I'm not talking about any aliens. Now I'm interviewing people who are channeling different alien entities, etc. But I feel like now, if you're on a spiritual path, you're becoming a new version of yourself probably every couple of months. If you're consuming a lot of content, maybe every 6 months if you're consuming a limited amount of content, but we're changing fast.
Oh yeah, once you open your mind, I mean, because it takes really two things to learn a lot. You need to have some raw intelligence, but that's not enough. If you're closed-minded, you're not going to learn anything new. You got to be open-minded. You got to be able to contemplate the absurd, right? So over
Right.
500 years ago, a very brilliant mathematician and scientist worked out the geometry. And in his book on the revolution of the celestial spheres, he speculated what seemed preposterous, ridiculous at the time, which was the Earth is not the center of the universe with the sun and the stars going around us. We're going around the sun at 90 miles a second. That was crazy talk. Well, Copernicus turned out to be right.
And they didn't even
Thing
let him publish that till after he died, right?
he had to delay the publishing of his book till after his death because the Catholic Church was going to excommunicate him, which was like a death sentence, no funding, no social life. I mean,
You're like, whatever
yeah.
now.
Yeah. And there's no different. I mean, this has gone out all throughout history. 1841, Richard Owen examines large bone and teeth fragments, speculates there were once giant lizards roaming the earth he called Dinosauria. He was laughed at. Alfred Wegener in 1912 suggests the continents are slowly drifting across the surface of the earth, laughed at by the scientific community. So anytime there's a new concept, people think you're crazy. So a channel like this, right now, a lot of people look at it and say, well, those people are crazy. They're off their rocker. My 25-year-old self would have looked at the 60-year-old Dave and said, oh, that's so sad he lost his mind. Well, no, my mind was opened and I learned some new truths. So yeah, it's hard for us to swallow. It's hard for us to take on a new paradigm, but
Right.
truth is
That's
truth.
why I say it. I already said it once. I want to say it again. Take in what resonates and leave behind what doesn't, because it just might not be for you right now. It may never be for you, but things trickle in and then you get exposed to other things. And when evidential information starts to come in, that's what starts to change it. Like for me, past lives, like there is no question, there are mountains of evidential information and evidence that this happens. It's not a speculative, maybe it would be nice if I had had a past life. To me, that's absolute fact. Like I'm not going to even think twice about it, but there was certainly a time where it was I don't know about that. So I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
we'll
and
get more
now,
and more
like,
of that.
I just heard recently, I think from a channeler or something like that, that um, there isn't a human being on Earth that hasn't had less than 400 lives. I mean, we've all had at least 400 lives
Well, and if
on
you've been
this
on the other
planet.
side, you understand that this is very simple to us from our collective consciousness. It feels very real. It feels like we've lost these things and I have these problems and I have all of these things to worry about and this complexity in my life. And it does not seem like a simple thing while I'm here, human me. But on the other side, when I have become that higher self, this is a child's game. Like this is what's almost like the joke of the universe. It's so simple. And if you kind of understood that from all of these 1,200 or so NDEs you've studied.
Yeah, I mean, one of the common things people arrive and they laugh and they say, how could I have forgotten about this beautiful, elegantly simple plan of creation that I'm a part of? There's a phrase or an idea they say in these near-death experiences over and over again, and that is there's a perfect plan and it's working itself out in its perfection. Well, down here on planet Earth, it seems like chaos, but consciousness learns through contrast.
Right.
The physical incarnations are a critical part of the engine of growth of creation. I have heard that if it were not for souls incarnating into these physical lives, and these are very difficult physical lives, so Earth is the hardest planet in this galaxy in which to incarnate. There's only 3 planets that are as hard as Earth in the entire universe. So it's
Okay.
tough,
Oh my
but
God, you're blowing my
it's a
mind.
critical part of creation growth. Without physical incarnations, the engine of growth of creation would stop and the bubble of love of heaven could not continue to exist and grow. So we are considered the daredevil souls and appreciated and honored in heaven for the
Have you
work
been
we're
watching
doing.
my videos? I
No, I
spent
haven't watched one of them yet. I just subscribed to
hilarious
your channel before I came
three
on. So
3 years. Thank you for that. I hope other people follow your lead. So 3 years ago, I created this series of videos called Uncover Your Soul's Purpose, What You Don't Know Is Holding You Back. And I don't even know which video, couldn't even tell you now. I referred to us as the daredevils of the universe because this is the hardest place, this is one of the hardest places to come and live and exist because we, number one, veil ourselves to forget that we are everything. And number
yes,
two, that love that we are on the other side is the state of being that we're in. And we forget that that's our state of being and we come here to just experience it. And that's the pain. That's the people having depression and not feeling loved and feeling so alone. And it's just the most lonely place. And we know on our planet, they've done experiments, sadly, but they know that if they deprive a mammal of love, of connection, of touch, it will die. So
yes,
for humans, we are mammals like this. If you didn't have those connections, you would not survive. And it's woven into the fabric of what we are. But what David just said, I've never heard anybody say before. I understood, and this is partially, I think, from NDEs that I've encountered over time, where they were shown when they were having a life review or having a reception where other souls were talking to them. They were saying that they were revered by souls on the other side because most souls will not choose to have an incarnation here because of the difficulty level. But you just said that there are 2 other planets that are as difficult, if not more difficult than this one. Tell me more. I've never heard anybody say that before.
I wish I could tell you more, but I can't. I have heard quite a few times that Earth is the most difficult planet in this galaxy in which to incarnate. I only heard from one near-death experience testimony. They were told there were only 2 other planets like Earth, so they didn't give a ranking. So Earth could very well be the most difficult, but I think I did hear that there are worse planets than Earth, so I don't think we're the most difficult in the universe. But I mean, there's over 400 billion stars in this galaxy. I mean, it's a big place to be the toughest place. I mean, if you're here today, that means you're an expert soul. You're like the Green Beret or the Navy SEAL of souls. And really, it's beyond that because you have to be an expert hiker to go up Mount Everest or to hike the Appalachian Trail or something like that. You have to be an expert incarnating soul to take on planet Earth.
Mhm.
Now, it's such a huge jump in consciousness and such a huge learning experience that for every 100 souls that are qualified and want to come to Earth, there's only a body for 1 out of 100. So you're like the best of the best of the best to be here.
I hope
You know,
everybody's really listening to that. If you just tuned in and you heard that, you are the best of the best of the best, no matter how successful or unsuccessful you think your life is at this moment, no matter how many problems you're taking on, no matter what you're dealing with, your level of depression, your anything, any problem that you have. You are the best of the best of the best to be living inside that incarnated avatar that you're in right now. Like it's you. Keep going.
yeah, and so a lot of times we don't measure success the way heaven does. I
Of
remember one
course.
NDE, this guy was shown this alcoholic person who waited outside of his office building and always asking for money so he could buy drinks. And the people showed him in his near-death experience. They say, well, let's show you who this person really is. And they reveal the soul of this individual, this homeless alcoholic man. And it was this beautiful, advanced, noble, benevolent soul, highly advanced among human souls, and had chosen this life to teach these businessmen compassion. So,
Wow.
when you're in this life, don't measure success the way the world does. Just being
Such a great
here,
message.
a human being on this planet, experiencing the fear, love, duality, a generator of light and love is a huge benefit to creation. Just you being here is a huge success story to the creation process.
Let's share a couple more of those. I think one of the ones that I heard that touched me the most, there was a man who had a life review. This is not somebody I've interviewed. This is one of the near-death experience stories I remember. It just stuck with me ever since I read it. He had like a life review at the age of 50, and he was shown out of his entire life, out of everything that he had done, there was one act that he did at the age of 7 that the other side revered more than all others. He and his family stopped at a rest area, and he was given a bucket, and he and his sister were asked to go fill the bucket with water, and it was a distance to walk. And when he filled his bucket, he filled it all the way. And as he was walking, he realized he was never going to get back all the way to the car with this full bucket. And instead of just dumping it out, he looked around and he noticed a sapling, young sapling, that he thought, I think it could use some water, walked out of his way, dumped the extra water so that he could finish carrying the bucket. And he was shown that because he walked out of his way, he didn't just dump it where he was, and he thought consciously about who else can I serve, and gave it. It was the greatest act of self unconditional love that he could have shown to another. He didn't even show it to a person or an animal. This was to a plant, but that was the single greatest act of his entire life. So stop and absorb that for a second. Have you heard that NDE story? Are you familiar with that one? Do you remember that
I
one?
haven't heard that one. I heard one where a guy was going through his life review. It's similar. And he had like a stadium full of beings watching, angelic beings watching this life review. Sometimes you only have 2 or 3 beings. Sometimes you have thousands. He had thousands watching. And he was out in public and had a half bottle of water that he didn't want anymore. He was going to throw it away. And he sees this little plant struggling to grow on the sidewalk. And he says, oh, it's a hot day. The plant's probably thirsty. He dumps his water. And when he dumped his water on the plant, those angelic beings watching, they stood up and they cheered in a deafening boom, just,
I just got goosebumps over
yeah.
my whole body. Like, who would think it was a big deal to water a weed? Like, it's making me want to cry. Like, thinking just not of the weed, but of the compassion of the person, without thinking that that's what we really are. Like, what we are on the other side, the love that we embody, people cannot really even imagine in the veiled state that they're in right now. But that's what you are.
Yeah, at the core of every human being is the love of creation, even those who are acting out in darkness. And it's not plants, and it's not just plants and people, it's animals too. Like I remember one near-death experience, he was shown one of the crowning achievements of his life was something he thought nothing of. This guy lived on a farm. He had cats and dogs and sheep and cows and chickens and all sorts of stuff. And one day this starving cat shows up, So, okay, well, we got, cats and dogs already. We'll take it in, nurse it back to health, and, it became part of the family. And he didn't think anything of it, just like, all right, one more, no big deal. Well, in his life review, when you go through your life review, you experience it from those around you, even an animal, what they were going through. Well, the cat never, since it was young, never knew companionship, never had a friend. All it knew was suffering and struggling to survive. It knew that it was getting weak and emaciated and it wasn't going to make it. And it knew that, well, there's those humans over there that are caring for animals, but, I might get killed if I go up there. Well, I don't have a choice. I have to risk it. And it goes up there. And instead of hostility, it gets taken in and fed, and it has friends and compassion. And, the kids would pet it, and it, always has food. And now it's like got this joyous life of a family and luxury when all it knew before was suffering. And that was huge to the cat's life. And the angels told this guy that was one of the best things you ever did. So a lot of things that we don't think anything of are huge to heaven. And a lot of things that we think are a big thing, like, oh, I started this business and I grew it and then I sold it to a big Fortune 500 company for $10
Got
million.
$1 billion valuation.
Yeah, it's like, well, that doesn't mean anything to creation. They don't care about that stuff, or I
You're
won a
like,
trophy because I was the
what?
fastest runner. It's like, no, the creation doesn't care about that. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. I
their
love
priorities
this.
are different than our human ego priorities. So.
Right. I love a conversation like this. Okay, I think I'd like to take this in a little bit different direction, because you told me that you do something called information channeling. Will you
Yeah.
explain what that is? And maybe we could do a little bit of it if you're open to it. I know you haven't been feeling very well, but if you're not open to it, it's totally okay.
Yeah, I'm still getting over the flu, and unfortunately, it's not something I can just muster. It just happens sometimes spontaneously. So, for the listeners who may not be familiar with channeling, what channeling is, we have a very low vibration based on our level of consciousness here on planet Earth. And aliens and those in heaven have a much higher vibration. And vibration is just like frequency on a walkie-talkie or a CB radio or a, two-way radio or something like that. If you're not on the same frequency, you are not going to be able to communicate. So in channeling, an angelic entity or maybe a physical being on another advanced alien planet or something like that will lower their vibration, and then the human being will raise their vibration. And when they meet, now they can communicate in non-linear communication. Now, what is non-linear communication? Our communication is linear. I say words, and I say the word tree, and your brain hears the word tree, and then it associates the word tree with this thing that grows in the ground with leaves and a trunk and branches. Well, they just like all at once, just nonlinear, bang. And so they can get a message in a split second that would take an hour, a day, a week, a year to explain. So, like an example of nonlinear communication with us human beings is if I send you a PDF file, Adobe Acrobat file of the Bible, you get it in 1 second in your email, but it's going to take you 2 months to read it, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So channeling is nonlinear communication. And then what the channeler does, the one who's bringing the message, is they use the consciousness of the human being to communicate. So there's things like I'm married to a Mexican woman, and I'm bilingual. So there's something in Spanish in the Mexican culture called a quinceañera, which is the celebration of a girl becoming a woman. It's age 15. It looks like a wedding without a groom there, or sort of like a bar mitzvah. Well, there's no word in English for quinceañera, so you can't just translate words. You have to understand the culture. So the channeler uses their understanding of culture to interpret that message and give the message. And so I get information channeling. Now, when some people channel, they remember everything, and others, like Bashar, channeled by Daryl Anka, forgets. Well, I will sometimes do information channeling, and I don't even know I'm doing it until I watch the video of my guest appearance, and I'm saying something, and I think, I didn't know that. And then I investigate it and find out it's true. It's like, I don't remember saying that. I don't remember. So it's kind of odd, but it
Can you
happens
give us an
sometimes.
example?
Um, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I think one, I was talking about the future Earth, and I was talking about all these things that the future Earth was going to be seeing and how it was going to happen and the things that we were going to be doing. And afterwards, I watched the video and I said all that stuff, and I thought, I don't know that. I never heard that in a testimony. I have no way of verifying that. And my spiritual guides told me, well, you're channeling information. So I get information from my guides, and my guides are that's my higher self. That's me. So the most of us is on the other side of the veil. So when you're a soul that's big enough and advanced enough to take on a human body, your energy is so big you can't fit it into a human body. It would, if you tried to fit all the energy into the human body, it would just burn to a crisp. And so you separate a piece of your energy. And so most of us is on the other side. So a lot of times when you hear messages from your spiritual guides or angelic, that's you. So I hope that doesn't bother people to know that often your guides are you. But that's
I
what my
agree.
understanding of it. So channeling is often just messages from them. And it's not always pleasant. I mean, I remember we were watching, my wife and I were watching this movie about World War II, and this Jewish man was just being treated horribly by the Nazi soldiers. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't understand how they can have that attitude, like this life doesn't matter. It's completely meaningless. Like we're just going to abuse this and kill these people, and it's nothing. It's just like a pestilence. I don't understand that attitude. My guide said, "Oh no, David, you understand it really well." I was like, "What? What? No, I've never had that attitude towards another human being." They said, "Well, you have a lot of wasp nest outside, and you go out and you spray the raid on the wasp nest and knock it down. You kill them all. And the reason you kill them all is because you've been bitten a few times. And so you have this fear that one of them is going to bite you. And you might have 15 minutes to an hour of pain and maybe a welt for a couple of days. Doesn't really hurt you, but you don't want to go through that little minor inconvenience. So you're going to kill them all as if they don't matter. You know the feeling very well. You don't apply it to humans. You've gotten past that, but you were as barbaric as they come at one time. You had that attitude towards other people in other lifetimes.
Wow.
So here I am thinking I'm this highly spiritual person going, oh no, God, I'm as barbaric as they
We
come.
always have one thing to learn. I'm glad that you
So,
mentioned that about the insects, because I want to share something. I haven't had this person on my show yet, but at some point I will. But I have a friend that I spent some time in Egypt who had a near-death experience, very, very deep one. He was in a coma for multiple weeks and came back with evidential information and all kinds of just changed. This has changed. And he can now understand animals and he can understand things. And he said one day he got in his car and he looked up as he started the car, it started to move, and he noticed that there was a bee on the windshield and thought, oh, it'll just fly off. But it didn't. But this is not like the bee is talking to him. This is a telepathic communication, a packet of information, and he felt the fear of the bee, the fear that the bee was not going to be able to make its way back. And for people who don't know, bees live in like a 2-mile radius. Like if they get trapped in your car and you take them somewhere and let them out, they're not going to find their way back to their
wow.
group, their hive.
Yeah, I
They
didn't know
have a
that.
very specific, so it knew intuitively that it's being moved away from its existence, and it freaked out. And it was such an overwhelming feeling for my friend Pete that he pulled the car over, got a piece of paper, helped lift the bee, and he felt the gratitude of the bee and the relief of the bee as he let him off to go back and rejoin his beehive family. So I
Yeah.
think that there will be a multitude of things that we understand. I used to think it was stupid when I would hear about a culture who wouldn't kill anything. Now, obviously, I've not evolved enough that I'm a vegetarian or anything like that. I still enjoy bacon and different types of food, but I'm not personally killing them. And if I had to, there's no way I'd be eating it because I just feel like I'm above that, but not above somebody else doing it. So I feel like we all have a lot to learn. There's no one on the planet who's probably, unless they're living in a house as a monk and not ever walking outside, we're stepping on ants, we're doing these things, we're inadvertently hitting butterflies with our car. Like there's no way
Yeah,
around.
and we'll grow up, and the problem is we're not smart enough. We're still like little children that don't know what the heck they're doing. And so when we grow up, and this is what I've heard, oh, that's an example about the information channeling. I got information once that the Pleiadians, here on our road networks worldwide, it's estimated about 500,000 to 1 million animals die every day on the road, every day.
On the road from us driving?
Yeah, yeah, just being hit by vehicles. Worldwide, about 1 million animals die every day. And I was shown or given the information the Pleiadians don't have that. They don't have systems of transportation that kill millions of animals. They don't do that. They don't cut down trees to build houses out of. Now we're really primitive right now, so we'll eventually get to the place where we become vegans because we'll be able to replicate meat. But some people, their biology needs meat still. Now, as we mature and advance and our consciousness raises, our biology will change and we won't need those meat products like we do now. But the first step we have to take as a worldwide culture is any animals that are used as food sources have to be given a good life. They cannot be put in miserable conditions where they're unhappy. It's bad for the quality of the products, whether it's milk or cheese or meat. If the animal is given love and shown love and given a good life until the time of slaughter, that improves the quality of the meat products and
Well,
the
not
animal.
only the quality of the meat products, but I had somebody on my show very recently who said that the consciousness, not only of the meat that you're consuming, but also the people who are processing it is encoded into that you're ingesting. So the more pure, to your point, the thoughts or the life of the species that you're eating, or even the people who are packaging, etc., working with them, is the better it is for your body. Like the more your body can take that nutrients and utilize them, and the poorer or the more, I guess, slaughtered or whatever the people that we're working with them are lower vibration, the less of the nutrients you're able to take in. So there may be things that we'll learn in the future scientifically, even about how we ingest food, and the quality of everything attached to it makes a difference.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I didn't know that, but thank you for that. But I'm not surprised to hear something like that. And of course, I've heard that, it's important to grow some of your own food, even if it's nothing more than like maybe you have an apartment or a condo or something, and all you can grow is a little bit of parsley in your window or something like that. It's important to grow a little bit of your own food because the food is aware of the energy around it, the energy of the
Oh.
animals and the human beings around it, and it will tailor its ingredients to the energy that it feels. So it's important, locally grown. And then as we get smarter as a species, we're going to solve a lot of the problems because human beings are supposed to be the caretakers of the planet, but we're too ignorant and immature right now to be good caretakers, but we'll learn that job. And as crazy as this sounds, this is what they say is going to be the future Earth. We're going to be communicating with insects and plants and animals, and we're going to tell the plants, okay, you grow here. And then we're going to communicate with the insects and say, okay, you see that garden over there? Insects, you stay out of that. That's the human food. Now we're telling these other plants we know that you like to eat to grow over there. And so when you want food, you go to that garden that we're communicating with those plants, telling them to grow there. That's where you go. And so we're going to solve a lot of problems. Like right now we're using pesticides and we have GMOs, and that's all horrible. But our maturity as a species, and when we gain the ability to communicate with plants and animals, it's going to solve a lot of problems. We're going to form partnerships, and we're going to cooperate with them, and we're going to be really smart about the way we do things. But right now, we're still kind of just coming out of the barbaric age.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing all of that. You're making me feel so hopeful about the future, and not just hopeful about what I get to experience right now, but knowing that every act that we are doing helps the next incarnation. So maybe I don't get to reap some of the benefits now, but many of us will probably choose to come back, even though everybody says, I'm never coming back. This is my last lifetime. How many times have you heard that? Like every day. But I think that we do choose to come back here. So,
Sure.
David, I would be remiss if I did not ask you a couple of questions about what you've learned from NDEers. I guess the first question I want to ask you is, why do you think so many more near-death experience stories are coming out into the collective, either because there's an increase of them with our technology and our ability to save people and bring them back, and or just because the people are more willing to share it and be open and not feeling like they're going to be criticized for them, and or the elevation that they're adding to the collective? Like, what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, we're hearing a lot more, and one is it's basically what you just said, all of that. So people are more open to it than they were in the past. So 50 years ago, if you would have talked about your chakras or higher self, people would look at you like you're crazy. But
And you
now
would have
it's,
been.
yeah, it's even in the movies, right? Don't go towards the light, Jim, stay here. People know about it. If you had shared your near death experience 100 years ago with your doctor, guess what they would do?
They probably
Mental
institutionalize
institution.
you.
Yeah. I mean, I heard a testimony from, I think it was 1972. The lady died, had an NDE from giving birth, and she told her doctor all about it. 3 weeks in mandatory psychiatric evaluation. So people are more open to it. That's number one. We're kind of waking up spiritually. There's a lot more spiritually awake people. The second is a lot more communication. Now, I heard my first NDE in 2007 when YouTube was fairly new. It was hard to find an NDE on YouTube. I searched every day and I only found 2 or 3 a month. And now there's more channels than I can keep track of. I mean, channels like yours, you got 335 videos and a lot of interviews with NDEs. So there's tons of information out there. And it's becoming more accepted. People are being more open about it. They're talking about it um, just because our consciousness is shifting and is more open to it. So, yeah, it's all of those things. And of course, medical technology is better. More people are being revived. And of course, they're coming back with their experiences.
For you personally, with your scientific skeptical background, what has been the most impactful part of the near-death experience story that has compelled you to keep listening and seeking them out and finding more of them? What is it about them for you?
Oh, for me, it's probably just the beauty of heaven. You know, they talk about this love that's so strong it can't be described in human words. Even the word love is completely inadequate to describe it. They say things like, imagine the strongest love you've ever felt and multiply it by millions, and you still don't come close. The beauty of heaven. I mean, I'm probably one of the few straight guys that's a sucker for flowers. I just love
Oh, come
flowers.
on. Oh my God.
We
Flowers
got
are amazing.
lots of flowers here, and I hear about the flowers of heaven.
Yeah, me too.
They glow with their own light. There's colors in heaven that don't exist here. So we have three primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. And a mixture of those three colors make up all the colors of the rainbow, or sometimes it's red, blue, and green. It depends on the technology. But those are the primary colors. There are over 80 primary colors in heaven. So it's just a buffet for the senses in terms of colors. And these flowers, they grow with their own light. They make these heavenly tones and kind of sing. And then some of them are huge. Some of them are like the size of a human being. Some of them are the size of giant trees. So there's these
Wow. I've
beautiful
never
heavenly
heard one the size
gardens.
of a giant tree.
Yeah. And of course, then there's just the way people describe heaven. You know, it's first of all, you're young and healthy. You know, people come out of their body and they're feeling quite young and energetic. I remember this one 7-year-old girl, Kathy Jordan. She wrote a book called The Birth Called Death. And when she was 7 years old, she had a high fever. Her brother and died. Her brother, who had died in the Vietnam War, came and got her. And I think it was her testimony. And they're going through the tunnel, and she can see other souls in the tunnel. And some of them are like her, just kind of like this excitement, but calm. And other souls were like, blah, just like dancing, for lack of a better term. And she says to her brother, "What's up with those guys?" And her brother says, "Oh, those were elderly people who were in these broken down bodies riddled with pain, and they're overjoyed to be young and healthy again." And so,
Mm,
in the levels of heaven where you have a light body, the higher levels, you're just the sphere of consciousness and awareness. Each level's more marvelous and glorious and beautiful and blissful than the previous. But in the ones where you have a body, people can appear any way they want, and they tend to appear as the best looking version of themselves. So, like one lady got to heaven, she says, "Well, I saw my grandmother, but didn't look like her." I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" She says, "Well, my grandmother is gray hair, no teeth, wrinkled skin, hunched over. I got to heaven, and she was this beautiful 30-year-old woman with long black hair. She smiled and had a pearly set of white teeth. And, you just look great in heaven. So you're young, you're energetic, you're just full of life and energy. You've got this love and peace and joy and bliss that's beyond human words. There's these amazing gardens. It's a great place. So what the hell are we doing here?" You know, that's the question that
well,
comes up. Well, like we talked
yeah.
about before, consciousness learns through contrast. My home is really comfortable. I got air conditioning and heating and a lazy boy and a big screen TV. But if I had to stay here cooped up 24/7, never leave the house, I'd go nuts. So souls, especially adventure ones, like the people listening to this video, some of you adventurous ones like to leave the comfort of your heavenly home and come down and have a big adventure in the ultimate virtual reality. The ultimate virtual reality is indistinguishable from reality, and then you have amnesia, so you don't even know you're in a simulation. So you hear about
Right.
these things, are we in a simulation? Sort of. That's what we're doing down here. It's the ultimate VR to learn and grow and help creation grow. Yeah.
Isn't that like kind of the marker of a great movie or a haunted house or an amusement park ride? Like the more real it feels, the more thrilling it is.
Yes.
But
Yes.
when you're going into that haunted house, you're coming out alive. You're not going to really be harmed. But if you really get like deep into it, you'll be physically scared. You'll have visceral, real body responses of fear and adrenaline, but you can't be harmed. That's this.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost funny that people are afraid of dying. The little tiny facet of God that's immortal and whose major aspect is being eternal, cannot be destroyed, being afraid of dying. That's almost funny,
It
you know?
is. There's definitely some irony in that one.
Yes,
I
there
love
there
that
is.
thought.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, David, this has been a delight. I have so thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
I have as
This
well.
the stories back and forth about some things that we both have taken away from these near-death experiences are just like, that's the whole reason that I have this channel. But I want people to be able to connect with you as well, because you have your own content that you've been producing, your own channel. And I'm hoping that people will go over and watch some of these. We didn't get a chance to do the information channeling, but I know you've done this in some of your videos. So tell people how they can find you, work with you, etc.
Sure. My website is godtookmyclothes.com, godtookmyclothes.com. And my email is there. So if you have a question, you can send me a question and I answer with a little voice attachment. That's absolutely free. There's a link to my counseling services. There's a preview copy of my book you can download, decide if you want it. And I think I've got a link to my YouTube channel there and some other near-death experience resources like NDERF and Spiritual Awakenings International and that kind of thing. So there's some links to some other major organizations that talk about near-death experiences.
Beautiful. Well, David, thank you. Thank you so much for what you're doing, for your part in helping to wake up the collective consciousness. We all can use more of this. Keep going, keep producing more and more stuff for us all to watch and learn and just be inspired by.
Thank you for everything you do. I heard just recently from a non-physical entity who was being channeled by a woman, and he said that it was channels like the one you're doing that are helping awaken humanity. So thank you for all you do as well.
And of course, this channel would be absolutely nothing without everybody who tunes in to watch. So thank you so much for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.